They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everybody. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz. And this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be tuning into our fine program, we appreciate you taking some time to spend it with us. Hopefully it's been worth your while thus far. We spent most of hour number one, or all of hour one, I should say, on the divisional round NFL games. The Bucs over the Saints, the Chiefs over the Browns, Bills over the Ravens, and the Packers blowing past the Rams. You can find that if you want to go back and listen. We're on the iHeartRadio podcasting app, Amazon Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you do subscribe, we appreciate a little feedback, hopefully in the form of a positive review, but we'll take, cookies, milk, love, cards, whatever you want. Just throw it, mostly the review thing, but if you want to send other stuff, we'll find out with that too. So we're going to switch back to the NFL in a little bit. We have some NFL news and notes to get to and our AFC and NFC championship picks as well. But first, it is time for some NBA talk because we are a month into the NBA season. And actually, Jose, I'm going to start right off with my stat of the week for the NBA, speaking of a month into the season, just to prove that we should start paying attention now. 13 of the last 16 teams in playoff position through the first month of the NBA season made the playoffs last year, and 9 out of the last 10 seasons, either 6 or 7 teams from each conference in the playoff position through the first month made the playoffs that same year. The exceptions last year were the Timberwolves, the Suns, and the Hornets, but outside of that, all the other teams that were in playoff position through 4 weeks made the playoffs. So that is to say we should paying attention to who's where right now because we could be looking at a playoff situation already through a month in. The big news that I'm sure everyone has heard by now, James Harden in what is just a monster of a trade that is, I don't even know how, I would love to know how long this took to put down because there's so many moving parts to this trade that it's a little bit ridiculous. I'll run through it, and Jose, I want to thank you for breaking this down in a way that I can follow because my brain almost exploded. But I'm gonna read it anyway.
When you read it out loud, I don't know if it's gonna be that easy to follow, but do your best.
Maybe I'll read it twice. So for James Harden, the Rockets receive Karis LeVert, a guy who I've never heard of before in Rodions Kurik, 3 first-round picks from the Nets in 2022, 2024, and 2026. They also get 4 first-round pick swaps in 21, 23, 25, and 27. They also received Dante Exum and another first-round pick in 2022 from the Cavs via Milwaukee. The Nets received James Harden, obviously, and a 2024 second-round pick from the Cavs. The Cavs received Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince. And I don't even know.
I don't understand why. If you're the Cavs, why are you even involved in this trade? Like, you got nothing. I'm sorry. I gotta take a look at Taurean Prince. Like, why are you even facilitating this trade? Like, did you get money on the side or something like that? It just seems weird. As I was looking at it, like
they got free season tickets to the Nets. That's what they got.
I have to look at it more and see if maybe there's something I'm missing from the Cavs side. But that was the head scratcher to me because this from the Nets and the Rockets. And I'm sorry if I cut you off. I'm just gonna I think the Nets. I think they're both. This is a win-win trade. It's one of the rare win-win trades for the Rockets. After unloading Harden, and they already unloaded Westbrook earlier this season, you now have a ton of picks and some decent young talent in John Wall and Karis LeVert. You really can't ask for much more than that. You got, I think, what's it now, a total of 6 extra first-round picks they acquired this year, and you get the right to swap picks if, for whatever reason, the Nets don't finish well in 2027, which is certainly possible because I don't think any of these players will still be on the team by then. Like you finished number 1 overall or number 30 overall. We're going to take your pick. Like, this is setting you up to potentially, to be better in the future. And then, also Dante Exum, another first round pick. He was number 5 pick in 2014.
I didn't realize that.
He's not.
He was high.
Yeah, it's because he hasn't been very good. He hasn't been, he hasn't really lived up to the billing, and so he's kind of fallen out of the basketball conscious a little bit. I think this is also a winning trade for the Nets because with as many picks as you want, this is the ultimate goal, to get a guy like James Harden, to get a Hall of Fame talent, and we can. You and I have had many criticisms for James Harden on this show, but at the end of the day, he's a Hall of Fame player, one of the best scorers in the last 30 years in the NBA, one of the best scorers of all time, really, in the NBA. He hasn't won a championship, but when you put him next to Kevin Durant, eventually Kyrie Irving, if he ever decides he wants to play again, then you have a super team, and that's how you win in the NBA today. For the most part, you need to have 2 to 3 stars, and the Nets, to me, now have become the favorites in the East.
I believe that was your highlight of the week, was it not?
Yeah. I'm just jumping right in. I guess I didn't want to just jump the gun and say highlight of the week, but yeah, that is my highlight of the week because I think that this is what you do. You have Kevin Durant, maybe he has 3 years left. Kyrie Irving, who knows when he's going to go crazy? I don't even know. Does he have a year? Does he have 2? I have no idea what to expect from Kyrie Irving. You have James Harden also at the end of his career. They're all desperate for another championship. You have the Lakers, although they lost last night to the Warriors in kind of a stunning game, but the Lakers are looking great. The Celtics just brought back Kemba Walker from injury, so they're going to start rolling. The Nets had to do this. If you want to win now or next year, this is the move you had to make, especially before someone else swooped in and took him from you. This is a great, great move by the Nets.
Yeah, I agree. And I think my highlight of the week actually surrounds this same trade, just like yours did. I think, Harden, as like you said, as critical as I've been of him in recent years, he is still what he is. And in his first game back, he was the first player ever to score a 30-point triple-double in his debut on a new team. He had 32 points, 14 assists, and 12 rebounds. And over the Magic, which, is good. Magic are a decent team. And he looked great. Under the radar, Kevin Durant had, I think, 42 points in that same game, and that no one's talking about. And conversely, my low light of the week, just to tie it in, is the fact that Kyrie Irving has picked a really bad time to start missing games, because now you have Durant and you have Harden sort of forming this relationship, or reviving this relationship on the court, and it's sort of establishing who they are and what they do, and taking 75 points of the team's score in that game. Mm-hmm. And so Kyrie is he already was probably going to be on the back burner, but this doesn't bode well for him, because if those two kind of rekindle their on the court relationship, Kyrie might be sitting on the sidelines, kind of staring off into nothing and wondering, I don't know what he's going to be doing, wondering if the earth is still flat, but he's not going to be on the floor scoring.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way. I do think that he's going to have some value on this team no matter what. He's a proven scorer in the NBA. But I do want I'm sorry, yeah, if he plays.
If he decides to play. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if he could just stop being such a head case and just play basketball. But I do wonder what happens when he comes back and if they go on a 3-game losing streak or something, like, because the James Harden joined the team, they've won 2 games, it's all smiles, everything is great.
Yeah.
And if Kyrie Irving comes back and they put up a stinker, then how do they respond? Because I don't look at Kyrie Irving as being, maybe this is unfair because I don't know him personally, I just don't look at him as being extremely mentally tough.
Yeah.
I feel like he's kind of fragile.
I think that's
so. I can't imagine that if he comes back and they lose, that he's going to react very well. Or if he comes back and only has 15 points while Durant and Harden are dropping 30, if he's going to be okay with that. So I do wonder about how they're going to gel when it's all said and done. But this is what you have to do. You have to put great players on the team. We saw in this last game when they beat the Bucks, and they were just knocking down shot after shot after shot late in that game. And when you have great players like Harden and then Durant, not only do they knock down clutch shots, but they knock down tough shots. Guys where guys are guarding them, double teaming them. They find a way to make plays. And when you have 2 and 3 guys who can do that at any point in time, you have a very, very dangerous team. I would be very worried about the about the Nets if I was another team in the Eastern Conference right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting when Kyrie comes back because we've seen all the big twos and we've seen a few big threes over the years.
Yeah,
but I feel like in every successful big three, we've seen someone kind of understand what their role is. With Heat, I mean, Chris Bosh was a mature guy. I mean, he was a monster when he was on the Raptors, and then he became sort of the third option when he was on the Heat with LeBron and Wade. Same thing with Kevin Love. When Kevin Love was involved in sort of that big three with Kyrie and with LeBron, he was the guy who was on the back burner. And don't forget, when he was in his former life, he had a 30-30 game at one point before he joined the Cavs. And then even before that, I mean, you go back to Jordan, Rodman, and Pippen. Rodman didn't score. Rodman never even tried to score. I mean, he just knew he was on defense and rebounds. That was his job. That was his mission, and that's what he did well.
And I think the mold
kind of understood their role.
Yeah, and I think the mold also is you look at the Celtics when they had Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett, where it's just we all are great players and we all have our spots. And that would be the one area where I would worry a little bit about the Nets, where maybe they have 3 of the same kind of player. But I just think Durant is so good. He can score. He can score in the paint. He can score from the perimeter. He's going to be the guiding force of that team. So I think they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, and I think that as a Harden, I think as a 2 or like a 1A, I think is going to be very effective because Durant is the unquestioned. I think he's the most talented player on that team, and that's saying Absolutely. A lot. I think from top to bottom, he's the most. We hear all this junk about James Harden being the most unstoppable offensive force we've ever seen, and I disagree. I think Kevin Durant has far more ability to score at will against anybody on the floor, whether it's big man, small man. I mean, he's, and even that's coming off of an Achilles tear. So I'm so happy to see him back. And I think you're right. I think Kevin Durant has to be the unquestioned leader of this team and kind of put everybody in their place. Most notably, probably Kyrie Irving, if he starts getting out of line or starts crying about his touches. And you look back, I started looking back at other big threes, and you mentioned the Celtics, but then there was also Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker that come to mind. And those guys, they're very different players. Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, we talked about. The other 2 that came, I mean, Bird, McHale, and Parrish. But I think the best big 3 at that I almost forgot about was Magic, Kareem, and James Worthy in the 80s. I mean, that's
crazy.
Might be
the best of all time. That might be the best. I think
James Worthy is so underrated because he's on a team with. I mean, he was the best player on that Carolina team with Michael Jordan.
Yeah, for about a year.
Yeah,
for about a year. And then I think that big 3 ended up winning 5 championships. So
there was Wilt, Jerry West, and Elgin Baylor too back in the 70s. I mean, they were pretty good. And I think the only other one Bill Russell, Havlicek, and Cousy were also pretty good. So there's some, but again, in all those, I think, interestingly, you look at that 2004 Lakers team when it was Shaq, Kobe, Karl Malone, Gary Payton, how that just sort of.
When they did get to the finals. They
finals. They lost to a faceless team in the Pistons who had better chemistry.
Yep.
You say of all the players on the court, you have Shaq, you have Kobe, you have Gary Payton, you have Karl Malone, and Chauncey Billups is your Finals MVP. Like what?
Yeah, that's fair. And like you said, like you alluded to, I still at this point think I would give the Lakers still the favorites, have the favorites to win because of that team chemistry that they have. And I'm not sure if we'll see what the Nets can do and if they can get to that level. But right now, it just feels like it's superior athletes winning the game, not necessarily superior team ball. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. And I couldn't help but think just the last note on the Nets. I mean, if you're Russell Westbrook, aren't you a little bummed right now? It's like the fans getting back together. It's it was you and Harden, and then you got jettisoned because Harden didn't want to be there anymore, and you don't want to be there anymore. And now Harden goes and plays with Durant, and all of a sudden, I don't know. I kind of felt bad for Russell Westbrook for a minute. I mean, he's doing okay, but with Gordon Hayward and everybody down there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I would feel bad for Russell Westbrook just because you're on a terrible Wizards team that is, I think, 3-7 last I looked, and 3-8, and yeah, you didn't get. Everyone else got to go to a championship, have a chance to win a championship. You've got a chance to get to groom the number 1 overall pick next season. So,
yeah, and I made a mistake. Hayward's on the Hornets,
yep.
Right? Not the
Yep.
Tied up my Michael Jordan references with a little too much, but all right. So a couple other things in the NBA. Just first, reactions kind of go around the NBA news this week. Kemba Walker finally makes his return to the Celtics in a loss to the Knicks. I mean, just quick reaction to this.
Yeah, 10 seconds. It's nice to see him back out there and healthy, especially with how now the Nets have drastically improved their team. We'll hopefully see the Celtics kind of take it to that next level now that they have their medium 3 back. I won't call them the big 3. I'll call them the medium 3.
They're like an extra medium. They're pretty good. I think Kemba definitely makes the Celtics better. He's a great player. I've loved him since UConn. Losing to the Knicks, I guess, stop clock is right twice a day. The Knicks are going to win a couple games here, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's nice to see him back and
healthy.
Yeah, the Celtics, hopefully they make a run this year, a deeper run. Paul George, averaging 24 points per game. He's having a great season thus far. Said that he's motivated by being seen as weak in the postseason last year.
Well, he had a terrible postseason, especially. Well, I wouldn't say terrible postseason, terrible final 3 games of the postseason when they were up 3-1 and should have won. He's arguably having his second best season. It's nice to see, but I feel like you shouldn't need to be motivated to be your best. Let's see if he can keep it up during as the season goes on and the wear and tear of this really condensed 82 game schedule. Because to me, I believe the only real motivation is self-motivation. So if that's what he needs to play at his best, I would worry about that running out in game 60 of the season.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to accept that you're upset about how you were seen in the postseason by having a good regular season. Like, what I'm going to judge you is when you get to the postseason again, and I'm going to see how you act, because that's ultimately is more important. I mean, I would like to see him average 24 points a game all year. I think that'd be great for him. Maybe it would give him the confidence he needs to have a good postseason. But as of right now, it's great. Yeah, a month into the season, you're having a good year, but show me, don't tell me.
Yep.
The Heat off to a 5-7 start, a little rough, a little maybe finals hangover for the Heat. Anything to worry about?
In another division, I would say yes, but the Southeast division is trash. Right now, the leading team is Atlanta with a 6-7 record. So Miami's really only 1 game back, and I have a feeling by the end of the season they will find a way to beat out Atlanta, Charlotte, Orlando, and Washington for the division title.
Yeah, I'm not worried about this. I think we saw Jimmy Butler in finals be utterly exhausted by the end of that, so I think that there's a little bit of a hangover.
That's a good point. Yeah,
they played the longest possible time they could in the bubble with the Lakers, so.
Yeah, it's true.
Maybe just kind of resting and kind of getting back, and sort of a quasi load management. Although I hate that term, but maybe that's what they're doing. And I think they're going to be fine, because I think you're right. They're a better team than their record says they are. Speaking of good teams, Bucks have won 7 of 9 to take first place in their division. This feels like same old. I'm not. Again, it's sort of like Paul George. Like, okay, wake me up when the postseason gets here, and then I'll pay attention to you guys.
It was nice to see them get going, but also disappointing to see them lose to Brooklyn last night when they could have really made a nice statement on the road in a game they really had every chance to win. And you're watching Harden and Durant make big baskets down the stretch, and it just makes me wonder who on this team is going to take and make tough shots in the postseason. I don't know who that player is. Drew Holiday's only averaging about 16 points a game. They gave up a first-round pick for him. He hasn't really lived up to it. Neither, and to give us credit, we didn't think he would. So I'm not overly impressed. I'm happy they're doing well, but I'm not overly impressed. I'm just going to quickly add in my low light of the week right here. Mavericks, they're on a 3-game slide. Like I said in the beginning of the season, Luka Doncic is an amazing, amazing player. He's having a great season. He needs help. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a nice player when he's coming off the bench, not as a starter.
Yeah, I think he went 0 for 12 the other night. I was like,
he's an okay player. I'm not saying he's bad, but he's not a guy you want out there 35 minutes a game. He's a guy you want out there for 18, 20 minutes, coming off the bench, giving your guy a breather, giving your second unit some life. And you look at their team, their offense is too predicated on Luka Doncic being amazing and not on good overall team basketball, which is why you see their offensive metrics are near the bottom of the league almost across the board. They're going to have to improve as a team if they want to go far. Luka cannot carry this load. We've seen players try and do this. It's not possible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Porzingis looked pretty good, but his health is always a question mark.
Yep.
And they do. They need one. I think the Bucks and the Mavs, honestly, are one piece away from being really competitive.
Yeah, that piece was named James Harden. He's gone now.
Well, yeah, I think Harden would have done very well on the Bucks because I think that's the perfect complement to a guy like Giannis. As far as, I don't think Harden on the Mavericks would have been well because I feel like that's Luka is the man on that team, and I think him and Harden would have they're too similar in a way. They're not exact, but offensively they're both creative and they're both kind of ball centric. So I don't think that would have worked very well. But maybe a guy like Westbrook would have been good on the Mavericks. Somebody just kind of take the onus off of Luka and kind of let him work around off the ball a little bit more. But obviously that's kind of hindsight at this point. We'll see. Hopefully they add somebody. But all right, we're going to take a break. We have some NFL, switch back over to the NFL news and notes we have to get to, and we have to make our championship picks and kind of recap our season-long bet that we have going on. So a lot to get to still. One more segment to go. So stick around. We'll be right back on the Benchwarmerz podcast.
You can reduce your risk of COVID-19 by cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched items and surfaces every day. These items include remotes, tables, counters, light switches, doorknobs, handles, toilets, and sinks. Wear disposable gloves to clean and disinfect. If you can see that the item is dirty, wash first with soap and water or another general cleaner. Then use a household disinfectant to kill germs. Follow manufacturer's instructions for application and proper ventilation to safely use the product. For phones or other electronics, follow the manufacturer's instructions for cleaning and disinfecting. If no instructions, use alcohol-based wipes or sprays containing at least 70% alcohol. Dry surface thoroughly. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
And now back to the Benchwarmers podcast with Lou and Jose.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I am still Lou Ruggieri. That is still Jose Ortiz. And this is still the Benchwarmers podcast. Hopefully you've been enjoying the show up to this point on either the iHeartRadio podcasting app, Amazon Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. Hour one, chock full of NFL reactions to the divisional round of the playoffs. Bucks over the Saints, Chiefs over the Browns, Bills over the Ravens, Packers destroying the Rams. We touched on the gigantic, mind-numbingly crazy, complicated James Harden blockbuster trade earlier this hour, and some other NBA news and notes, highlight and low light of the week. And now it's time to switch back to the NFL because there's a lot going on by teams that are not in the playoffs, actually, and we have to make some picks coming up a little bit. So, Jose, just knee-jerk reaction to some of the news from this week, a lot of coaching hires, and first and foremost, your San Francisco 49ers lost their defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, to the Jets, who is now the head coach of said team. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm happy for Robert. Like I know him like that. I'm probably happy for Coach Saleh.
Last year.
That's how I feel. I'm so close to my coaches in the 49ers. No, very happy for him. I knew it was going to happen. The defense has been really good under him, and at some point he was going to get a chance. You actually texted me something about it that really stuck with me. Where it's like we haven't. I have to look back, but I don't really feel like there's been like a lot of success from defensive coaches taking over teams. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm overlooking someone, but it just feels like you have to be an offensive guy, and maybe he had that in his DNA. We just haven't seen it, right? But the Jets' offense is what really needs to be improved. So we'll see what he can do.
I mean, Matt Patricia comes to mind most recently, and that was not a successful experiment by the Lions. But then the Lions really haven't.
I think Vic Fangio was the head coach of the Broncos. There, he was another one.
Sure,
and didn't really turn out well. So, yeah.
Now, speaking of defense, though, well, before I get to that, I think Robert Saleh is obviously. He's benefited from having a great draft. A lot of good draft picks on defense, a lot of good signings on defense. He's had that Niners defense when it's healthy is unbelievable. I think that the Jets, I don't know what to say about the Jets. Maybe they're just going in the opposite direction. Adam Gase was offensive minded. Robert Saleh's defensive minded. Maybe they just want to get as far away from Gase as possible. Adam Gase had hair. Robert Saleh doesn't. I don't know what else you can do. I would also want to distance myself as far from Adam Gase as possible.
I think that maybe guys are just looking for some new blood, right? Rather than recycling Adam Gase or Jason Garrett or one of these other guys who've been used and you've seen what the results are, rather than just, no offense to the Cowboys or anything, but hiring Mike McCarthy or someone like that. You go out, you go out and you hire a new guy and see what he can do. And I think that's what they were trying to do.
There is a rumor that Adam Gase was interviewing for the offensive coordinator position for the Seattle Seahawks.
Please don't.
Which I would advise, in my humble opinion, to not do that.
That would be so bad.
Adam Gase, notorious for not getting along with talented players. Seattle, unless if you haven't been paying attention. Also, Jamal Adams is there. How could they even possibly think to bring in Adam Gase after he was the reason that Jamal Adams left the Jets? That's crazy. Even if it's on the opposite side of the ball, it doesn't matter.
He should be exiled from the NFL for at least 1 year. At least a year. Like, give this guy a chance to cool off. That's what I'm saying. Like, I hate when they keep recycling these scrubs, these guys who aren't getting the job done and riding the coattails of having Peyton Manning as your quarterback. I'll tell you, guess what? I could have been Peyton Manning's head coach or offensive coordinator, and I'd look good too.
Peyton, go out there and do whatever you want, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Here's the playbook. Figure it out. But speaking of defense, Brandon Staley, hired by the Chargers for a head coaching position. Brandon Staley was the defensive coordinator for the St. Louis Rams this year. So another defensive-minded coach being hired by another, youngish team. I think this is less of a story really, because the Chargers are talented basically from top to bottom. I would like to see that defense get a little better for the Chargers, but I think overall, again, you have, just talking about Peyton Manning, you have a guy like Justin Herbert. It's kind of, it's a little easier when you can go, all right, man, you got this, right?
Just do your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I actually had the same exact thought. There was like, you know what? I don't know how many games it was, but the Chargers had to lose at least 7 or 8 games last year by one score. And I think you get a defensive guy in to kind of hope that maybe the defense can take a step forward and you start winning some of these close games, because your offense is going to put up points.
Right.
Just, can you make the defense just a little bit better so you can start winning those games? So I like the idea of the hire. I'm not going to pretend that I know a lot about Brandon Staley, but I like the idea of going in the defensive direction for the Chargers, because they don't really need help on offense.
Yeah, the only thing I will say about that is sort of like what you're talking about with Peyton Manning. Brandon Staley looks good because you have Aaron Donald and James Ramsey on the same team on defense. I could call some plays that might be successful. All right, Aaron.
Good point.
Rush, Jalen cover, and rest of you guys just don't mess up. I don't know. So it does. There is a little bit of that. I think that the Chargers is a good situation for. I think this was the best position for any coach to get into. Yep. So, they kept it on the West Coast. Maybe they know Staley a little better just by virtue of, being close by. I would like to see him get Derwin James healthy. because I keep hearing about how Derwin James is the best strong safety in the league when he's healthy. So I'd like to see that for a change. So maybe that'll help. But good for him. I think he's going to be very successful because, if he could just turn around a few of those close losses that the Chargers had last year. I mean, this could be easily a 12-win team without changing much of anything. Other news, Urban Meyer, hired by the Jacksonville Jaguars. This interesting. I'm curious if the Jaguars did not have the first pick overall, if Urban Meyer would have chosen taking this job, but obviously that's not what happened. Urban Meyer, Ohio State fame, obviously, amongst other places. I am curious, this is sort of a conspiracy theory I think I threw out there. What if Urban Meyer goes Ohio State friendly and takes Justin Fields over Trevor Lawrence for the Jacksonville Jaguars? I don't think that that's going to happen, but if that happens and the Jets end up with Trevor Lawrence anyway, I think that this could be...
They'll have a party in New York City going crazy. There's no way that happens. If they were going to do that, they would trade back with the Jets probably and just say, hey, you can have the number 1 pick. Just give us the number 2 pick and your other first-round pick. Yeah. And, you could... I'm actually not a huge fan of the Urban Meyer hire just because... Actually, Ryan's Urban Meyer hire. But, I'm not a huge fan of the Urban Meyer hire just because I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in college coaches making the leap. I know that some have been able to, but I just feel like it's been more... And I don't have the exact numbers, but it just seems like it's been less successful than it has been more successful. So I'm not a huge fan of it, but I guess who else are you going to hire?
I mean, I'm curious with Urban Meyer because he had some health issues. He's kind of
that's true.
Started jobs and quit jobs pretty abruptly over the course of his tenure in college. So I'd like to see him succeed. I think with Trevor Lawrence, I think that in the litany of draft picks, they have James Robinson. They have a couple. Chark is there. I mean, they have a couple of good players. After that complete overhaul that they did with that 2017 AFC Championship team. So if you have your quarterback, you're in a good shape. You're in position to win. So I don't think that it's going to be all smiles and rainbows for the first year or two, but I think after a while, I think it's if he stays and Trevor Lawrence is half the quarterback that everyone is saying that he's going to be, I think that they're going to be a pretty competitive team for the first time in quite a while, or consistently competitive for the first time in a while.
Well, we'll see. I'm skeptical. I'm very skeptical when it comes to college coaches taking the leap.
Other news: Arthur Smith hired by the Falcons as their head coach. Arthur Smith, I don't know a lot about. I don't think anybody knew a lot about him. I've seen there's a lot of kind of trepidation because he's sort of he's 38 years old, I think. So, like you're saying before, against Adam Gase, I mean, he is young. He's in that sort of Matt LaFleur role. He was Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator. He was also their tight ends coach. He's been on basically his entire professional career has been on the Titans in various positions. So I don't know what to say about this. I'm glad that Dan Quinn is gone. So hopefully Arthur Smith is better.
It could be one of those moves that we look back on 5 years from now. It's like no one had ever heard of this guy, and he was great. I believe he just recently served as offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, as you just said. And he just, I don't know. I don't really look at the Tennessee Titans offense as being really elite. I know they put up big points this year. I feel like it's a little misleading, but listen, I'm happy with all these picks. I'm happy that they went with new guys and didn't just recycle old, used, head coaches. Like they're giving new guys chances to succeed. I'll just sit back and watch. But of all the hires, he was one of my least favorites.
Yeah, I don't necessarily. I don't know what to expect. I mean, it can't be much worse than we've seen the Falcons over the last year or so. But speaking of bad teams, the last notable hire, Dan Campbell, hired by the Detroit Lions. I thought this was they sort of announced this in the middle of a divisional playoff weekend where it was just kind of buried under everything else that was going on. Dan Campbell, former player, and coach. He was the interim coach for the Dolphins in 2015. He's been on the Saints for the last 4 years as assistant to the head coach and the tight ends coach. He was on the Giants, he was on the Cowboys, he was on the Lions, and he was on the Saints in their Super Bowl winning teams season in 2009. Again, this sort of fits in that same mold. I mean, he's a tight end, so I don't know what to expect. He was a tight end. Again, he can't do much worse than Matt Patricia did, so I guess why not?
Yeah, the Lions probably took what I call the George Costanza route, and they just kind of did the opposite of whatever they were thinking, because they haven't obviously made a good pick at head coach in quite some time. I'm just looking at the history of head coaches. Oh. Jim Caldwell is the only one who had a winning record in like the last, goodness, it's been like since 1967. So, I mean, it's just loser after loser after loser. And so you figure, I mean, we're already an irrelevant losing franchise. What else can you do? Just hire Dan Campbell. Who cares? Yeah. Like, that's kind of the feeling I got from it. No disrespect to Dan Campbell. I just had never heard of him before. Wasn't one of these hot offensive or defensive coordinators that are going to, like Robert Saleh was, everyone knew he was going to get hired somewhere because he was one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. Dan Campbell didn't have that type of juice behind his name. Right. So we'll see what happens. But it's another skeptical, weird pick. I don't know why they hired.
So the other news, there's two teams that don't have head coaches yet that are still open: the Eagles and the Texans. Eric Bieniemy was interviewed by the Texans, although he's been interviewed by a lot of teams and not given a job. Josh McDaniels is coming on as the favorite for the Eagles job, which I think is questionable at best. Between these two teams, Jose, which is the better coaching position? Like, which one would you take right now?
I think, yeah, I think I would see. Here's the thing: if I take the job, is Deshaun Watson going to demand a trade? Like if I know Deshaun Watson's going to be there and be committed and invested, then it's easily the Texans to me.
It doesn't like Deshaun Watson sticking around.
Yeah, exactly. With which we can get into that to another. It's just, I know they feel like they have to trade him. There's just no way you're going to get enough value from him. It's just not possible. He's too good. You could spend the next 15 picks trying to get a quarterback as good as him, and most likely will miss.
But so if he doesn't want to play, you're not getting anything from him.
You have to trade him. You probably have to trade him because you're not not going to get any value. You may as well get something for him while you can, and get the king's ransom. But it's going to be the type of thing that they're regretting. They're like, why couldn't we make this work for the next 10 to 15 years?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think not knowing with Deshaun Watson, then you have to take the Eagles.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's between a rock and a hard place. I think the Eagles is the better job, but it's also a lot more scrutiny. There's a lot more expectation. The fans are a lot less forgiving. But the ownership is better, and with the Eagles, obviously, the Texans, we don't know what's happening. It just seems like there's such a systemic feel of disarray from top to bottom that you don't feel that in the Eagles. I think that Mickey Loomis is he just has a little more control, and I don't know. I think the Eagles is the better job right now. Obviously, the whole Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts thing is interesting, but I would want to know that before I walked in. I'd say, okay, well, do I get to choose who's staying and who's going, or are you going to tell me who it is, and then I'll make my decision. But all right. We'll see. We'll keep tabs on all this stuff and see how it goes. We have to talk a little about our AFC and NFC championship. We have a season-long bet going, regular season. We've been doing a regular season win-loss, and then we also had a point spread with gambling bet. Put your money where your mouth is, we called it. And I won one, Jose won the other. So we've decided as the tiebreaker, we're going to go through the playoffs and Super Bowl and see who wins to see who gets to win this bet. This week we both went 3-1, right?
Yep. Yeah, I picked the Packers. You took the Rams there, and ended up being
way.
Yeah, and then I took the Saints, and then you took the Bucks, and obviously that went completely wrong. Yeah. So here we are. I'm 5-5. You're 6-4. As everyone who knows us should have predicted, it's going to come down to the wire.
Yeah. So we have to pick, and we decided with the points is a little bit easier. I don't think it matters as much in this round, in the championship rounds, but regardless, we'll do it anyway because that's what we started with. So, Bucks at Packers, Green Bay up to this point, DraftKings Sportsbook, Green Bay is minus 3.5 points. Thoughts and feelings, and who are you picking on this game?
So, I think the Packers are unstoppable right now. I don't think anyone's coming into Lambeau Field and beating them. I know that it's not the same home field advantage as it once was. There's no Lambeau leap, all that stuff. But the Packers just look on offense unstoppable and on defense good enough to, especially knowing that the Bucks are, though they have been able to run the ball a little bit better. I think that you can shut that run game down. I wouldn't be overly surprised if the Bucks find a way to win, because when you have Tom Brady, you have a chance. But give me the Packers. I'll give the points and take the Packers.
So I think that, this game was really hard to choose, because I think you're right. I do think that the Packers, it's Aaron Rodgers is playing on a different level. But I think with the points, 3.5 points, I think that the Bucks, like we talked about with the Saints beating the Bucks, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. But you can beat them twice in the same season, and the Bucks put a beat down on the Packers in their first matchup. I don't think that that's going to happen again, because I think both of these teams, I think the Packers are much better than they were. I think the Bucks have gelled a little bit more, and I think it's going to come down to that point spread. So I'm going to take the Bucks with the points, getting 3.5 points, because although I think you're right, I think the Packers can shut down that sort of questionable run game with Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. The Packers passing game, outside of Jair Alexander, their passing defense isn't that great, and I think the weapons, assuming Antonio Brown is healthy, I think that Tom Brady's weapons, and more notably Tom Brady's experience in games like this, I think the pressure, while I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to succumb to the pressure, I think some of those other guys on that team might, because they're younger, outside of maybe Devontae Adams. I don't think that, I could see a couple big drops from the Packers. I think the Bucks their defense is playing with their hair on fire, and Tom Brady is Tom Brady. So I do think that the Packers are going to win, I should say, but I think that the Bucks with the 3.5, I think it's going to come down to, a last minute thing. So I'm going to take the Bucks with the points.
Okay. All right. Actually, that's surprising to me. I thought you were going to go with the Packers there. What's your feel on the Bills at the Chiefs? Chiefs losing, Bills getting 3 points right now, anyway.
This game, we saw it earlier in the year, the Chiefs beating the Bills, and a lot of that was a big Clyde Hilaire, Edwards-Helaire, excuse me, I couldn't think of his middle name. It was a big Clyde Edwards-Helaire game. That was sort of his coming out party. These two teams are very different than when they met the first time. The Bills, I think, more so than the Chiefs. I do think it looks like Patrick Mahomes is on track to play. Obviously, that would influence my decision if Chad Henne was the starter. I'm gonna go under the assumption that Patrick Mahomes is not gonna miss the AFC Championship game, and I think only giving 3 points. I think the Chiefs are just too talented, and Honey Badger on the Chiefs. I think with Josh Allen. Josh Allen is playing incredibly well, but their running game is non-existent. And while the Chiefs' running defense is not great, the Bills don't have a run game that the Chiefs need to defend. So if it's, again, I said this earlier in the show, but if the Bills are one-dimensional, I think the Chiefs are going to take advantage of that. And I think that this game isn't nearly as close as the Bucks-Packers game is going to be. So give me the Chiefs given 3.
I basically agree with everything you said there. The thing that I would also add, you basically did say this, is you can't be one-dimensional. You cannot be a one-dimensional team. And especially when you look at what is the Chiefs' strength on defense? Right, their strength is obviously on the offensive side of the ball, but on defense, their strength is getting after the quarterback and defend and like pass defense. That's what they're best at. Your best chance of beating the Chiefs is to run the ball, and clearly, outside of Josh Allen, the Bills can't run the ball. I don't know. Devin Singletary is not good enough, or the offensive line's not good. I don't know what's going on, but they can't run the ball, and they're also, even further than not being able to run the ball, they're choosing not to even do it. So now that the Chiefs don't even have to guess at what you're doing against them. You're on the road. You're not going to be able to control the clock. If Patrick Mahomes plays, also the Bills' defense, while they did play well this past week, I don't think they can do that against Mahomes. The reason they played well is because Lamar Jackson can't throw the ball very effectively. Patrick Mahomes can. And we already know that he's a former MVP winner, one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the NFL. Give me the Chiefs all day. I'll take the points, or I'll lose the points.
Yeah.
Or give the points.
And I think, as good as Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs are as a receiving tandem, and Stephon Diggs, arguably the best receiver in the league this year, aside from maybe Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are better. And Patrick Mahomes, if you get in a shootout with the Chiefs, you're probably going to lose. And I think that while the Bills are good or even great, and Josh Allen is great this year, Patrick Mahomes, assuming he's going to play with that team, it's too much. I think it's just too much on offense for the Bills to handle. All right, so we have one difference. So I'm one game ahead, so you can make up that game. I took the Bucs with the points. You took the Packers giving the points. We both took the Chiefs -3. So should be interesting. This is my favorite football week of the year because it's the last time that true football fans get to enjoy football. So that'll do it. For Jose Ortiz, I'm Lou Ruggieri, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.